One of my reading group activities was always just mini whiteboards and the kids would write sentences. This is talking kindergarten, early years, and they'd be practicing out sentences. And I always thought as a teacher, God, it's so boring. It's not creative. Are they enjoying it? But my daughter now, she has to write sentences for homework and she loves it. Like, it is her favorite activity to do is to write 2 sentences. So sometimes thinking this might not be that engaging, ask your class, did you enjoy this activity? What do you like best during reading groups? Just to get an idea of what they like.
Welcome to Rainbow Skies for New Teachers, where we're all about bite-sized tips and simple strategies for bright and busy new teachers.
If you're in your first few years of your career and want to make the rollercoaster ride of teaching more fun, streamlined and stress-free, you're in the right place.
We're Ashley and Alicia, the dynamic duo from Rainbow Sky Creations, and we're excited to be your teacher mentors on the go. There are rainbows ahead, my friend.
And together, we're unstoppable. Let's get into today's episode.
Rainbow Sky Creations acknowledges the traditional owners of the land we have recorded this podcast on, the Dharawal and Whadjuk Noongar people. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures.
We are back with Rainbow Skies for new teachers. Thank you for choosing to listen to us.
Yes, we always enjoy getting together and having a chat, Ashley and I, on the podcast. And today we're going to talk to you about reading group traps and how to avoid these 5 things.
Oh my gosh, there's so many reading group traps, isn't there? It can be a disastrous time of the day.
It can, and it can be a really stressful time of the day. Probably that's why, you start in the morning because everyone's the freshest, but I feel like it's sometimes just getting it done and just moving on with the rest of your day. When we used to work in Dubai, they would have inspectors who would come in every year and your school would be assessed and they would come into classrooms and they were called DSIB. I remember that I moved schools. The school where I met Ashley, when she left, and I did another couple of years there and I needed a change. To be honest, I'd been teaching for nearly 7 years and I had never had an interactive whiteboard. My friends, I needed technology. So
oh my gosh.
I had projectors, but never an interactive whiteboard. And I was like, I need to go to a school with more technology. So I moved schools and that year we were due for an inspection. And I was teaching a grade 1, really great bunch of kids and had an amazing team. And the inspector came in, first lesson of the day of me running reading groups. And I still cringe to this day at how disastrous that reading group lesson was. It was just, when people go see doctors, they get white coat syndrome and like they go to take their blood pressure's up because they're like, you're a doctor. And I felt like as soon as that inspector walked in, I just atrophied. Everything stopped working. I couldn't get words out. The kids were looking at me and I'm like, this is a disaster.
I must say, though, it is the worst time of day for somebody to come in and watch your classroom because even if you are running it fairly smoothly, it's kind of a bit of an organised chaos in a way.
It is. Yes, I like that term. It was organised chaos for sure.
Well, if you are experiencing this like Alicia and you're thinking, wow, my reading groups aren't running as smoothly as what I would like them to if someone was just to pop in and observe them, today's episode is for you because we're going to talk about some of those traps or mistakes that you can make during reading groups that really puts you off course or makes the classroom lose its flow.
Yeah. So there are 5 things to avoid. And let's start with avoid overcomplicating activities or choosing rowdy tasks that are going to get the kids excited and chatting and increasing the volume. Look, we've all been there. We've all given an activity that wasn't the right fit for the task that we want done. Don't overcomplicate it. Keep it simple. That is the key, especially for your reading groups. With students, you want to engage them in different tasks simultaneously, right? You've got probably 5 groups that are going to be operating in your classroom. So you want to pick activities that are simple, that they know how to play, and ones that they've probably done already on a regular basis. And I can guarantee the ones that they play a lot are their favorite ones because they're learning, they're engaging. There's something there that is hooking their attention. Pull out the game that they love.
Yeah, you don't want to overcomplicate it. You don't want to choose those activities. I remember when we very first started Rainbow Sky and I was diving deep into teacher Instagram, not realizing that there was so many, especially US teachers, that were sharing amazing lessons on Instagram. Like I really got hooked straight away. But one of the fads back when we started Rainbow Sky was having fly swatters, and kids would read words and then like swat the word with a fly swatter. If you don't know what a fly swatter is, it's like a long stick with like a rectangle at the end of it that's bendy and it's made of plastics. And they make quite a noise, these fly swatters. I actually wonder what people call them in the Northern Hemisphere. I feel like I'm using Australian terminology. Anyway, I just imagine doing that during reading groups. That would be not an ideal activity. That would be loud. Now you're giving your kids essentially weapons to hopefully engage in learning, but I'm guessing that there'd be a little Johnny that would be hitting somebody with that fly swatter. Activities like that, they look and sound really fun. And that could be a fun activity to do if you were sitting with a guided reading group and you as the teacher was there and you were actually talking and guiding the students. You could do an activity like that, but students that are working independently, no, keep it simple.
Just you saying that, I got flashbacks my first year of teaching and having the words written up on the whiteboard. Yeah, not my interactive whiteboard, just the whiteboard. And we called it Mosca because I believe Mosca is Italian for fly and the kids learned Italian. So we'd put all the words up on the board and say Mosca because that's what they did when they were learning Italian words, but we did it with our spelling words.
Oh, so there you go.
You can do it as a whole class lesson, not
so what
just
did
individual.
You do? You put the words up on the board and then they had the fly swatter.
Yeah, so you'd have 2 kids with fly swatters, or if you had a bigger class, you could have 3 kids with fly swatters, and they had to swat the right word, and they had to say like Mosca when they said it, like fly, and they then.
Oh my gosh. I'm thinking about all the different ways you could use that activity, like for times tables.
Yeah, it's very versatile.
You could be like 5 times 4, and then they have to swat the answer, or you'd say like 20, and they'd have to swat a times table that has that. Oh my gosh, I'm loving this.
You could do it for science, you could do it for history, you could do it for anything. Like it's topic-based, vocabulary-based. Yeah, gosh, I was keeping that one in the vault from everyone.
You were just telling me at the beginning of this episode you didn't want to tell the story about your awful experience of reading groups and having it.
Yeah, look at me. Really.
Look at you.
Putting on my cape today. So look, keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate those activities. Find those golden ones. And we have so many that you can choose from. Get on our blog. We will link this in the show notes and you can just see a really simple activity we have here with the nouns, verbs, and adjectives. The next thing is to avoid choosing activities that require explicit instruction or supervision. So what we're talking here, we're talking about activities that you're wanting students to do independently. When you're running the reading groups, you're going to have a group that's going to be working with you, and then the rest of the class are going to be independent little Vegemites doing what they need to be doing and only really having their peers to support them through an activity.
Now, Alicia touched on this at the beginning too, saying that it's good to choose activities that they're familiar with. And I think that this is key at this point here is choosing activities that they know what they need to do. They know how they're going to be successful in completing that activity.
And this is like you have tablets, you have technology, and you make one of those stations ones where they may be doing their reading eggs or their phonics or whatever it might be, because it's something that they know how to do every week and they get results and they learn their sounds and their spelling patterns and their graphemes and all that jazz. Use the tools around you to make it easier.
Definitely. I know we've spoken about this on another podcast episode. I can't remember which one, but I was saying that one of my reading group activities was always just mini whiteboards and the kids would write sentences. This is talking kindergarten, early years, and they'd be writing, practicing out sentences. And I always thought as a teacher, God, it's so boring. It's not creative. Are they enjoying it? But my daughter now, she has to write sentences for homework and she loves it. Like it is her favorite activity to do is to write 2 sentences. So sometimes thinking this might not be that engaging, ask your class, did you enjoy this activity? What do you like best during reading groups? Just to get an idea of what they like. And then you can combine that with the learning and with activities that aren't too rowdy, and you've got yourself the secret sauce.
Yeah, silly sentences. I would say that would be on pretty frequent rotation in my early year classes for sure.
Yeah.
Especially those ones where they like to use body words, but I find them funny too. Anyway, who's the mature one of the group here? What's our third tip, Ash?
Well, the next thing to avoid is lack of preparation for your small groups. It's so important to be prepared for that small group because they're with you and that is their one-on-one time with you to really hone in on those reading skills. So preparation is the key. Collect yourself 2 weeks worth of readers. So you have them there in your classroom ready so you can read the book before you actually give it to the students to work on. A tip that Alicia and I love to use is just getting a post-it note and popping a post-it note on the front of that book with some notes about, your warm-up or your key focus. It doesn't need to be super detailed, but you've got it there ready to go.
Yeah, that's great advice. I love getting 2 weeks in advance, or at least if I get one book that I know it's going to last me for 2 weeks, just
Yeah.
having it there, it just makes you feel ahead of the game and you know what to prepare and what's coming ahead. The fourth one is to avoid planning activities that require lots of marking, because who's got time for marking when you're teaching?
This is a hill I am prepared to die on when it comes to planning reading group activities that involve marking. You don't have time. Your key important factor during reading groups is working with that small group. Once you've done with reading groups, you don't want to have a whole pile of work that you need to mark. It's just the worst.
It is. And look, I'm going to say here as well, there is nothing wrong with if you have set a task right for silly sentences, or you've set a task for students who actually love writing and they just want to write, or they're doing a report. Look, there's nothing stopping you from citing that. You don't have to critique it and mark it down to punctuation and spelling. Like at the end of the day, I think sometimes we get a little bit caught up on thinking that we have to mark every single piece of work. And you don't. You can cite it and be like, great, look, they're actually making coherent sentences. They have shown imagination, whatever it might be that you're choosing. But you can just tick and stamp it and be like, were you proud of that work? And if that kid goes, yeah, I'm really proud of it, like, awesome. Do you want to share it with anyone? Do you want to read it to anyone? I think sometimes as students get older as well, and even the younger ones, we forget about how beneficial it is having peer assessment, like having a friend read their writing, or a friend listen to their story, or them being able to read it to a peer. Like that is so empowering to them. I don't know about you, beautiful listener, but my ultimate goal as an educator is to instill a love of learning. And that is how you're going to get it when you're not micromanaging every single piece of work and marking it. This is just permission to as well. If you're finding it that you can't find that task that you need that doesn't involve marking, and it will involve them writing a bit or something that involves a lot of work, just give yourself permission to cite it and just celebrate that learning with that kid, and you're done.
Yeah. I think that's a message that lots of teachers need to hear.
Yes.
We
Yes,
need to
you
do
do.
a whole episode on marking, really.
We do. Cheats, tricks, and just mindset overrides on it. Because
Yes.
the reason we probably get so passionate about this is because we have, I guess, felt a bit vilified for not marking every single thing, or feeling like we should, because that is how they did it back in the day when it was bums on seats and bits of paper and chalk and talk. And we know we've evolved as educators. All we're just saying is, if you've got that activity that doesn't involve lots of marking and the kids are engaged and they're learning, you're nailing it. You're doing awesome. Keep it up.
Okay, the next one touches a little bit on the science of reading, and it's about avoiding grouping students by leveled readers. Now, I know that there might be some teachers out there that are thinking, can't believe they just said this. If that's you, that is okay, because we're all on a different journey with teaching reading. But I highly recommend that you go back and listen to 2 of our episodes about the science of reading and how that research has really helped us become better teachers when teaching our students how to read. Now, one of the things that the science of reading really does is they don't group students according to those leveled readers. We look at specific reading skills and group our students accordingly. They may be reading decodable texts. They may be reading other texts, but looking at those strategies and skills that the students need to focus on, and that is how you need to group them.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a adjustment and a change to how things have been done. And we're chatting here as really experienced teachers who taught leveled readers. That is what we knew.
Yeah.
And it really is a bit of a shift. And if you're lucky enough, I guess I would say, to be in a school where they have the funding to be able to change all their leveled readers and get decodable books for the early years, the research is showing that the results that they get are phenomenal. I was just chatting to a colleague of mine whose niece is in a year 1 classroom, and she said, oh my gosh, for the first time in forever, I saw a child, and it was her niece, reading a book. And she said she saw a word that she didn't know. It was a picture book. She didn't go look at the picture. She went and looked at the word and went, oh, what do those letters say? I know these letters make this sound, but what does this sound make? And right then and there, that's proof in the pudding of a kid learning on decodable books and learning that the letters make sounds and learning those patterns. And I was like, oh my God, blown away, because how many kids have I taught would be like looking at the word and go look at the picture and be like, ball. So
Yeah.
look, this is research shows decodables work. And as you're working through and you've got those older students in those middle to upper primary, you're still looking at the skill development. You're looking at, oh my gosh, do you need to be working on your vocabulary, your morphology of understanding all these different prefixes, suffixes, these root words, all Or do we need to be having a look at still summarizing texts or, building up on your inferential or evaluative questions? You might be there going, oh, how do you do this? There are ways to do it and really break down those skills.
100%. Now, before we move on to a bonus tip, I don't want any teachers out there, even if you've been teaching for a while, to feel guilty if you've been grouping your students by leveled readers. As Alicia said, we have spent our entire teaching career. We've been teaching for over 15 years each, and we have spent our entire career grouping our students by leveled readers. And that's because that is what was best practice at the time. But now we know that the research is showing something else, then it's just time to give it a try. And sometimes it can be really hard to try new things, but it's often worth it. I didn't want anyone to make themselves feel bad or feel guilty if that's what you had been doing.
Yeah. You don't know what you don't know. You've got this. And Ashley's got a bonus tip for us.
The bonus tip is about something you should do, not something that you should avoid. And it's all about establishing a routine, because consistency and predictability are crucial for successful reading groups. To make reading groups a regular part of the day and to avoid the chaos and to have smooth operation, you really do need to have a routine that everybody in your classroom is familiar with. And for any new teachers out there that are listening, one thing Alicia and I always say is to do a dress rehearsal before you start sitting and reading with a group. So have activities out. Teach your students how to use those activities and have the groups humming and running, and you are just there facilitating. Then the following week or even the week after that, then you can pull a group out to work with you, because that way you have guided the kids and you've provided that scaffold for them to know how those groups need to run in your classroom.
Yeah, it's so empowering to pull yourself back and get in there with the students and show them what they need to do and work alongside them. You're going to find that will set you up for success. Promise, pinky promise, as my 4-year-old would say.
It's kind of like you need to slow down in order to speed up. And as teachers, sometimes we're like, oh, we've got to get all of this listed off. We've got to do this and this and this and this and this. But if you slow it down, you will reap the rewards later. Now, speaking of rewards, Alicia, tell everyone about Transform Your Reading Groups.
Yes, we have created a course to support teachers with this, because I will tell you that for probably 10 years of my teaching career, I always felt like reading and literacy groups were at the top of my professional development. I just always felt like I wasn't taught how to run these reading groups as effectively as we could, or as I could. So we created a course called Transform Your Reading Groups. It is to simplify reading group setup in just 7 days. We will teach you our no-fail 7-step system to streamline and organize your reading groups. That's our ultimate aim, for it to be an organized system that's working for you. We will give you short, sharp little videos. We've got a guide that you can print off and have it there ready for whenever you need it. And we know that as teachers, when you're running reading groups, you're also thinking about, I've got to teach my lesson, but I've also got to have these kids doing activities. We give you a bank of 18 ready to go activities. We'll teach you how to run your reading groups, and then we give you a bank of little activities that you can start in that week to have things running smoothly. We'll link it in the show notes. Transform Your Reading Groups.
Yeah, those activities, one of the best things about them is they're very little prep. So you can print them out. Some of them need a bit of cutting, but the rest of them, they just print and go. And then you are off and running. And they fulfill all of these things that we've spoken about today. They're not too rowdy. They're not overcomplicated. Your kids are going to enjoy them. They don't involve lots of marking. So that's another great thing about those activities that we've put in there. But if you want to have your reading groups really up and running with no stress, then that is the mini course for you. And you can really do it over a weekend, can't you, Alicia? It's not really very long.
No, you can even watch everything within an hour. Kathy, one of our year 3 teachers who has done the course, said she now really has a clear cycle to follow throughout the year. And she also loved, which I didn't mention, that we have action steps. At the end of each of the 5 steps, you got a little action to do, which will help you become super efficient at running those reading groups. So that's why we say within a week, boom, you're sorted. You're ready to go.
Those action steps really propel you forward. Awesome. So we will link Transform Your Reading Groups in the show notes, something that you don't want to miss. And we're going to be back, same place, same time, next week. Until then, there are rainbows ahead, my friend.
And together, we're unstoppable.